Level Up Show, episode 13. We have a treat for you today. Mark Hershberg is going to talk to us about a number of topics. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It is my pleasure to be here.
The first time we met, I was excited by your background, and it is so sexy and clean. It really tells me a lot about you as a business owner right out of the gate. And I always tell people that I work with, like, do your background, do the best you can with what you've got. So I noticed yours right away and absolutely love it.
Sure, I don't know I can't remember off the top of my head the exact way I phrased the background in my bio that I send out, but roughly speaking, from tracking terrorists and criminals on the dark web to building new tools and authentication systems, I've been building companies for over 20 years, for actually more than that. I'd rather not say how much more. I came out of MIT back in the 90s and started as a software developer, and then was lucky. It was a right place, right time .com boom. And I moved up in the ranks. These days, I am a CTO, a Chief Technology Officer, and I build tech startups. Some are traditional Silicon Valley type startups. I've helped Fortune 500s play startup. I've also helped academia launch new education programs. I've helped create programs at MIT and Harvard Business School. Now, along the way, in addition to building all this tech stuff, I recognized there was a shortcoming in my education. To get to where I wanted to go, to be that executive, there were a number of skills I needed. Sure, as a CTO, I needed to know how to code. That was important. But there were other things like leadership, communication, networking, negotiating, team building. All this stuff no one ever taught me. I had heard of it. They told me it was important, but didn't teach me how to do it. So I began to develop those skills in myself, quickly realized these skills apply to everyone. And as I was upskilling my team, MIT asked me to help teach at a course they have that we created 20 some years ago, referred to as the Career Success Accelerator at MIT. So in addition to building these traditional and new types of startups, I've also taught at MIT for over 20 years and some other universities, and then put out the book, the app, and the speaking that I do on professional development.
Those are really sexy topics. And those are the topics I think we should cover today. Those were the ones that I was the most excited about. The first one being communication. No one told me when I started my business, I needed to communicate. I couldn't have my expectations and my shoulds and coulds and woulds. And can't you just tell that that's upset me, or that, well, yeah, they'll get it to me whenever, right? Or it's death to a business. Can you tell us a little bit about communication?
Now, communication is a broad topic because it mean a lot of different things. For a lot of my work, part of it has been I need to be up on a stage. I need to present, not just when I'm doing my public speaking, but even when I go to conferences, or even within a company, I might say, hey, everyone, let me tell you about this initiative. And that's a form of public speaking. Public speaking happens even if you're sitting around the table with 3 coworkers and you say, wait, I want to pitch an idea. That's a form of public speaking. But there's other types of communication. We often hear a lot about public speaking. It might be, how do you write succinct emails? Because we're all drowning in emails. How do you get right to the point? Or even, how do you communicate this idea? I mentioned I'm an engineer, and when I talk to other engineers, I can throw in all sorts of technical terms, like, oh yeah, I know what you mean. I know that acronym. But when I am trying to explain this to the CFO or someone on the sales team, I can't use those acronyms. I can't assume you know what it means to have caching on a database. I'm going to have to explain that in different terms. And being able to communicate that way is also important. So communication is a broad topic, but being effective at communicating is very important. If you go back to what we learned in school, it was always, here's the question, write your answer in the box. Did you get it right? But in the real world, it's not just, can you get the right answer? It's, can you communicate that answer to the people who need to know it in an effective way such that they buy into it?
So how does a person start to do that? What are some of the first steps?
I believe the most fundamental thing that we can learn in any type of communication is understanding our audience. And this is what I focus on in my book, because again, there's a range of topics that we can look at. but underpinning all of them is knowing how to effectively communicate that idea to your audience. Let me give you an example. If I go to France and I need to give a talk, I unfortunately don't speak French. So I have to speak English, which means everyone in the audience has to say, okay, I have to put some mental energy into English, which is not their native language. So at best, I might only get 90% of their mental attention because 10% is being used for that translation. If I could speak French, I could get their full focus on what's the message and not, wait, what does that word mean? I'm trying to understand what he's saying before I can even parse whether I agree or don't, or how can I use it. There's that mental tax. Now, I gave the example with language, but in fact, all of us carry mental models. So here's a simple version of it. Imagine left brain people and right brain people. I think of, for example, Sheldon Cooper from Big Bang Theory, extreme left brain guy. And then let's think Phoebe from Friends, very right brain person. If you had to pitch an idea to Sheldon Cooper, you would do so in a very structured, formal, rigorous way. And there'd be 12 points, and each would have 3 subpoints. Okay, now let's go on to point 6, subpoint C. And he's good with that. He likes that. Phoebe, she'd get bored after 2 points.
Right.
She wants that big picture, that emotional connection. She wants the story. Sheldon, meanwhile, saying, let's get to the details. And so the same idea, the way you would communicate it to Sheldon versus Phoebe is very different. Now, this is a very simple example, left brain, right brain people, but we can extend this model and recognize as we communicate an idea, whether on stage or in email or however it's being done, we need to put the idea in the context, in the language, French or Japanese or English, but the style of the audience to get the best reception to it.
What do you think prevents people from doing that or taking those steps?
We don't train people to do this. We don't teach at all. At best, we have a one-size-fits-all example. I remember growing up in middle school and high school, they gave us the 5-paragraph essay, where you have the introduction with the thesis, your 3 points, and a conclusion. And that's a good framework. I actually use it quite a bit in my writing. And by the way, I tend to be a little more left-brained. I like to be very structured. Here's what we're going to do. Here are the points. Here's why it all fits together. Here's a summary. But there are some people where they want that story narrative. They want that emotional connection. We don't teach that in our schools, unfortunately, unless you're taking perhaps an advanced writing course at the college or graduate school level. So we need to teach these multiple styles so you're ready to really engage with them.
And where would someone get that teaching from?
You could take a formal communication type of course, or you can start to do this on your own. And you can join, whether it's public speaking groups, and they'll have different styles of delivery, things you want to do. But again, it's not just public speaking. You can also form, and for all the skills we're going to talk about, the best way to learn is to form a peer learning group. Because the thing about these skills, it's kind of like learning to play music or learning to do sports. I can teach you the rules very quickly, but you have to actually do and practice. So create a group of people, a group of peers also interested in this, and then work together and review each other's emails or review how each other's communicating and give feedback. Say, okay, let's suppose you're telling me you've got a pitch with a certain type of client and you know this about that client's style or company or personality. So let me hear your pitch, and I'm going to put on the hat and be that person and give you feedback from that perspective. Then you'll do it for me. And we're all going to learn from each other. And it's by practicing and practicing with this safe group where we can screw up the communication and we can get feedback. It's that repetition that will make us better.
That is so powerful. So that brings up a question for me. So in copywriting right now, it's all about story. So how could I write a sales page today that would reach left brain, right brain, different ways people think? How would it still be story based?
Maybe, maybe not. And here you can, again, take classes, read books, read articles on different ways to structure communications. There's again that 5-paragraph approach. Here's the thesis. Here's why my product is the best. And then we're going to go through the 3 points or 4 points or whatever. Could be a story. Let me tell you about a company. They were only doing $1 million a year in revenue, and they were struggling with this problem. And then they found out about this tool, this service, whatever. And we got them onboarded and we talked them through how to think differently about increasing sales. And then all of a sudden, and now it's the same message, but told in a very different way. You could do a classic historical approach. There's a company, day 1, here's what things look like. But when you go day 2, day 3, here's how things will evolve. That might be more abstract. That's not the specific narrative, that's story. That's more, here's a timeline approach. So we can just use these different structures, and you can find this online and then think about what structure might make sense. And again, just as an example to use myself, when I get salespeople who come in and start pitching me that story, I tune them out. So I don't care about how well Alice did and that she now has a $10 million company. I want to know, what's the problem you solve? How do you solve it? And I can decide if that works for me. But I can also tell you there's other people, if I start, let me just go right into the pitch and here's the data, they want that story. They want to know about Alice. And this is where we all have different styles. And understanding the style of your audience is key.
So if I have softwarepreneurs that are wanting to pitch to different business owners, what are some things that they could watch for so that they would know what a person's style is before they started to communicate?
You want to engage the person and see how she or he communicates. What is their approach? Are they very formal in their language and speech? Are they more casual? Are they very data-driven? Do they like to do personal narratives, whether themselves or other people? Do they talk about even I or we is a simple example. How often do they use the term I or we? That tells you, should be focused on them, playing to them, or talk about the team, because they connect more. If there's someone who often says we, you want to say you referring to the company as opposed to you, the person. There are subtle little signals like this, and those come across from just conversations. Maybe before you get into the pitch, you've had some earlier conversations. It could be you've watched them on social media. How do they communicate there? Maybe you've seen a video where they do an interview or they do a talk. Look for these little signals. It is subtle, but here again, that peer learning group can help us, because we can sit around together and say, okay, this is your upcoming client. Let's you and I and her, and we're all going to sit in a group and analyze. Because even though it's your client, I still benefit from trying to analyze and then hearing what you and other people thought. Oh yeah, I missed that. That's a good point. We're all going to improve our skill that way.
That peer group tip is big because it prevents us, when I say we, I mean business owners in general, from going out and talking to people a lot of times because we just don't know how to get into the quote unquote pitch, right? We don't even know, and then it doesn't go well. And a lot of it is, I think, a lack of skills. And one of them, I think, is listening skills. How does a person develop listening skills?
I think it comes through practice, but it's hard to do on your own. If you're learning that instrument, you do practice on your own, but without some type of coaching, even if it's just once a week, someone coming in saying, here's how you need to change how you're holding the bow or whatever else, practice only gets you so far. Now, here's the thing. If I want to learn to play the violin, I could go. I actually have a friend who's world-class, Juilliard, Carnegie Hall. I could get her to teach me, but that's overkill because I'm never going to be close to that level. I'd be working on Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. I could get an elementary school music teacher. I can get just a friend who knows how to play the violin. That's good enough for the level where I am. And so while we're talking about getting some coaching or feedback, you don't necessarily have to get that great leadership coach, that person who's going to cost you $500,000 an hour. This is where, again, the peer learning can help, because you can learn from each other, because you'll recognize things that you might not recognize in yourself, but your other peers will. So the listening, again, this group can help you reflect and learn from there.
How important do you think this is?
This is so incredibly important, we focus so much on the mechanical skills. I think, again, as a software engineer, I had to get better at software. And I still do. If I'm not paying attention to the new technologies, I become a dinosaur. If you're in medicine or accounting or law, you have to take COEs because you need to stay on top of the new stuff. And whether our industry has COEs or not, you need to learn, oh, how do I do ads on TikTok? Because I was doing ads on Facebook and this is different. And how do I do it? You do have to pay attention to that. But these other skills are multiplicative to that. So here's the example I give my class. We're going to do a little bit of math, but this is 6th grade math. And this is
Okay,
left
good.
brain guy.
Ooh, good. Okay.
Remember those word problems. So imagine you've got a rectangle that's 4 by 10. So 40 units, 4 by 10. You have to increase one of the sides by 2 units to maximize the area. So do you increase the short side from 4 to 6, or do you increase the long side from 10 to 12? And if you need to pause this for a moment to think about it, feel free. But now you've thought about it, the answer, of course, is we increase the short side. We go from 4 to 6, gives us 60. The other way is just 48. Okay, what does this have to do with anything? Conceptually, when we put those 2 extra units on the short side, it's amplifying the long side by 2 units. It's 2 extra get multiplied by 10. If you put the 2 units on the long side, you're only multiplying that 4. Now, all of us have long sides and short sides.
Right.
And more than 2. But think about those people who might be incredible within their discipline. They are so knowledgeable, but they speak. We'll take the software example. I think people really understand technology, but they're throwing around so much technical jargon, no one else can understand them unless someone else is an expert as well. So they are long and thin. They're so long in that side, but their communication's so short, and their overall area is tiny. By taking this person and taking that short side and making it just a little bigger, not that they're ready for the TED stage, they're not a master communicator, but their communication just gets a little bit better, their overall area, which is the overall capability, increases so much more. In other words, the ROI you get per time invested on your short sides, like communication, like networking, like negotiating, will have an outsized impact, will have a better return than just going only on your long side. You do have to keep up with your long sides, but don't only keep up with them.
So many people that I work with think that it's in the tech side, the tech skills that they need to improve. And the way that you just put that, I got the math part, but when you did the longer, that's where I was like, oh, aha, okay, I got it. That's really brilliant. I'd love to skip over to the next word you just said in that sentence, which was negotiating. Negotiating is hard for so many people. It's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. Tell me a little bit about negotiating.
Let me give you a simple example. Imagine if you got just a little bit better at negotiating. If you took a course, read a book, and imagine if after 10 hours of effort, you got 1% better at negotiating. Every deal you did was 1% better, 1% more revenue, 1% less cost, 1% improved outcome. What would that do over the course of your lifetime?
Right.
That would be huge. We're talking 5, 6, maybe 7 figures from a 1% improvement. And when you look at it that way, you say, oh my God, why have I not invested in getting better at negotiating? And by the way, this applies to everything, because if you got 1% better at communicating, you will close more sales or reach a wider audience. 1% better at leading, you will inspire that many more people. It's just easier to do the math with negotiating because it's usually numbers.
Right.
But now let's talk about one of the most important things you can do. In my book, not only are there very specific tips on here's concretely what you can do to be better at communicating, negotiating, leading, but there is a mental shift in each case. And what trips people up in negotiating is they think, okay, I am sitting down across the table from you and we're about to fight, right? This is a fight. I got to do the best I can. And that's what makes people anxious. You do not negotiate against someone. You negotiate with someone. You are my negotiation partner. We might be coming from different organizations, We might have at times opposing wants, but we negotiate together, and you are my partner, because if we together can't find an agreement, then we didn't negotiate to a successful outcome. So it involves both of us. And now you're changing that strategy to I am in opposition to you, to now we are working together. And that's going to reduce a lot of anxiety. There's plenty of other things you should do too, but this will help.
A lot of people that are wanting to work with someone, I think, don't find themselves at the table even. It's they've got the money, I don't have self-worth, I need them, they don't need me kind of idea. Do you have any tips or ideas for how to kind of level that table out so that it is a negotiation?
I'm going to give some general tips because I can't speak to a specific negotiation. If you think of a sports team, you turn on the TV and they're warming up the game, they're singing the national anthem, you watch the athletes come on the field and they play, and then you turn it off. You say, oh, that's great, I'll watch them again next week. But a lot is going on that you don't see. During the time when they're not on TV, they're training, they're practicing, they're planning, they're doing exercises, they're doing scrimmage games, they're sitting with the coach saying, okay, here's the other team we're going to play, here's their strategy, how do we have to adjust ours? They're doing all this work before they ever set foot on the field. The biggest mistake in negotiations is people start negotiating when they walk into the room. You need to do the same prep work. You need to plan ahead of time. And when we negotiate, if I'm negotiating with you, I need to think about how I can strengthen my position, ideally strengthen my position in your eyes, or how do I make your position seem weaker, particularly the other alternatives you have to closing a deal with me. So I need to, ahead of time in my prep work, think about what are the things I can offer to strengthen my position? What might you be thinking about? And how can I be prepared for it? And that's going to give you a lot more confidence as well as ammunition when you walk into the room.
And what if someone says, oh, that price is just too high?
Great. Why is it too high? Help me understand what price would be more comfortable for you. And I'll give you a concrete example. I had a customer, they were selling a financial service product. And in financial services, you often charge, the financial manager will charge his clients a percent. We're going to take 1% of assets under management. Each year, whatever you give me, I'll take 1%. I'll try to make more money for you after the 1%. So this company came in and said, we're going to charge you a percentage. They assumed their potential clients were charging, I'm going to make up arbitrary numbers. They assumed their clients were charging, let's say 10% to their customers. Said, oh, well, we'll charge you 3%. So I said, okay, we'll take 3 of your 10. Turns out the customers they're trying to sell to were only getting 3% from their clients. So when we came along and said, give us 3%, turns out we're saying, give us 100% of your revenue. No way that was ever going to work. That was not known to this company. And so once they said, oh, okay, well, why is 3% too high? And they said, because that's 100% of my revenue. Okay, well, we can't get blood from a stone here. We're going to have to find a different way to generate revenue. But if you didn't start negotiating and asking into the why, you wouldn't know. But money is not the only dimension. A mistake people make is they just focus on money or starting just money. And once we get that done, we'll do something else. Are there other things you can provide? In software in particular, there's what's known as a VAR, a value-added reseller, because I can go buy directly from Microsoft, or I can buy through this reseller. What do I get through the reseller? Now, maybe the reseller can get me some slightly better pricing because they do some volume stuff with Microsoft, but the reseller can help me get this set up. Because if I buy right from Microsoft, I got to figure out how to integrate this. Oh, they can help me set it up. They can give me best practices. They can provide support. They can do all these other services that are helpful. Law firms in New York, for example, very expensive services. They said, you know what we do have? Well, we have a lot of connections. We can introduce you because we have all sorts of clients, especially to startups. They say, look, we know money is tight and you're worried that we might be more expensive than the others, but we've got this network to other VCs, other customers, suppliers, partners for you. Law firms also in New York, they say, you know what? We have these big fancy offices in New York. Space is at a premium. Where can I put a monthly meeting of 60 people? That's actually kind of difficult and expensive in New York. A law firm can say, yeah, use our space because at night we're not using it. And so they can provide effectively other value. So think about not just price, but the bigger picture. What is the long-term value that the party you're negotiating with might be getting? And how can you add more value to that to make it worthwhile at the price you want, or to find value they can provide to you that might compensate for a lower price?
Yes, excellent tips. The last thing I think we wanted to dive into was you used the words career planning, and a lot of the people on this podcast and listening will be business owners. How does that translate over? You had in a couple of ideas.
Often I hear from founders, CEOs, business owners, they say, well, I don't need a career plan. That's what you need in corporate America, but I'm done. I have the title CEO forevermore. Right. That is not all there is to your career. Your career is not just a title. If you fast forward in your career, let's think about things that might happen. You may one day want to sell this company, maybe start or acquire a new one. I know many founders, CEOs who say, I want to get onto boards. So that is another step beyond this. Even if you say, nope, this is it. This is my job. I am going to do this for the next 20 years, nothing else. The job you are doing today is not the job you are doing in 20 years. You want your business to evolve. You may want to grow or expand or do different things. And the question is, do you have the skills today for the nature of the job that you want tomorrow? Because career planning isn't just about changing titles. It is about growing our capabilities. And so even if your title stays the same, define your role now, define what it will look like in the future, and then say, what do I need to do to have the skills from where I am to where I need to be in the future? That's your career plan. That's
brilliant. Thank you so much. Tell us about your book. Tell us a little bit about how we can find you. You mentioned an app. My ears perked up. Tell me a little bit about how we can.
I'm going to give you two websites. The first is for the book, thecareertoolkitbook.com. And that's my book, The Career Toolkit. On the careertoolkitbook.com, you can see where to buy it, Amazon, other places. Get in touch with me. I put out articles every week, and there is a page of free resources. The very first download on that page is how to create that peer learning program. Now, it's written for how to create it in your company. If you're saying, well, I'm a company of one, just go find other people, create a local meetup group, find other founders. They don't have to be in your space. Just find other people. And the download is completely free. I don't even ask for your email. I have nothing to sell you. Technically, the book, yeah, you have to pay for that, but I have no other services to sell you there. So that is all at thecareertoolkitbook.com. Bunch of free resources, and check out the book. Now there's also an app, Brain Bump app. It is free on Apple and Android, or you can go to brainbumpapp.com and you can follow links to go to the store. One thing I know, when you listen to a show like this, you say, wow, great tips. You might not remember much a week or two from now. If you buy my book and you read it and you've got those networking tips, those negotiation tips, you might not remember it a few weeks from now. So I put all the tips into an app. It's as if you went through my book with a highlighter, said, here's the key things I should remember, but not just from my book, from other books, blogs, podcasts, classes, talks. Like a streaming service, we're always adding new content. It's all free. And that's at the Brain Bump app. And when you download the app, you can download the tips from my book or tips from this podcast or that blog. And you've got them all in your pocket. They're all tagged by topic. So for example, as you're walking into a conference, thinking, what were those networking tips? You pull out the phone, you open the app, you tap networking, and boom, there are the networking tips. You'll get them 2 minutes before you walk in the room, and now they're top of mind. Or maybe you're saying, I'm really trying to get better at negotiating. Every day at 9 a.m. as you start your day, you just get a negotiation tip. You don't even have to open the app. It's like a daily affirmation. with one of the things you're trying to remember, go, yep, good tip, swipe, done. But we know by seeing it over and over, we're using spaced repetition, and that helps you remember it. So all of this completely free, brainbumpapp.com, or download the BrainBump app from Apple or Android stores.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for being a part of the show. Walk, don't run, grab the book and the app. And thank you so much for being a guest here today.
Thanks for having me on.